writing a professional report. So I would recommend you pay attention. It's a significant chapter that would help build that foundation for you to be able to grasp the reporting concepts on case study. Very, very important. All right, so here are the chapter contents. We'll look at the learning objective first. We'll also look at the outcomes, what we should be able to achieve after the class. We'll introduce report writing in the case study exams. We'll look at business analysis report. We'll look at financial statement analysis report, financial data analysis report, and very importantly, we'll look at executive summary. Executive summary is 20 marks, a very important prerequisite. Without an executive summary, you cannot pass case study. It's very clear. So the executive summary is very important. And the report structure, we'll be looking at how to follow the format, the report structure, then how do you communicate in your report, the language and style. Then we'll look at the report format and we'll round off in this class. So by way of the learning objectives, candidates should be able to understand how to craft good and professional reports, not just for case study. Of course, primarily you need to pass case study, but secondarily also provide good reports for your clients in real life, in practice, and also for your employers and business partners. And after this, your learning curve should be able to go up by understanding how to write a good professional report. Also carve out a good executive summary, which is very paramount and important, not just for case study, but for real life. And you should also understand the format of reports required in the case study exams. This is very important. Okay, so let's move next session about the introduction to reports in ICAN case study exams. Now, one of the key, or the main key to passing case studies, is that you need to master analytical and report writing. Very important. So you need to fine-tune, harness, and also develop your skills around reporting. Because deficiency in this skill, talking about analytical and writing skills, report writing skills, will really lead to failure in the case study exam. So the key to passing it is to master this skill. And this skill can only be mastered by practice. So as you listen to these lectures, don't forget, we have past questions we've been working on. Please engage and practice those questions. Those are very important ways to harness and develop capacity in building up your skills to avoid deficiency and to avoid failure in the case study exam. So there are three types of analysis in the ICAN case study exams. We have the first one is financial statement analysis, talking about how you analyze ratios, you crunch the numbers and you communicate those numbers in words. Crunching the numbers earn you less marks. That's why calculation alone will not get you through the case study paper. You have to communicate what you calculated in form of narratives, description, words, text. So ratios, common size, trend analysis, working capital analysis in form of financial statement analysis are what you use to communicate in case study. Those are analysis you perform in case study. We also have financial data analysis, where you analyze financial and non-financial data for problem solving, decision making. This data encompasses or the around performance management tools you use, strategic management tools you use, models you use, and we've looked at all that in previous chapters. So if you've not gone through any of those concepts, you need to go back to the YouTube page and glean from that very important videos. So aside financial data analysis, the third one is business analysis, where you analyze the environment, you analyze strategy, the apex decision makers in an organization, the board directors, you analyze their decisions, you analyze operational strategies using models, you analyze tactical strategies the organization employs to meet its objectives. So candidates must analyze and write reports to advise clients. If you work for an audit firm, mostly that's the scenario painted or presented in the case study paper. If you work for an audit firm or you assist your boss, you're an employee, you try to provide advice to your clients or your boss, it's very important to understand that the first step in analyzing and writing reports is to determine if those reports are internal or external. We have internal reports speaking to the memo format and it's addressed to your boss or to the board of your own company. So you need to determine first if the report is an internal and external report. And how do you determine if a report is external or internal? It's the output. You need to look at the output. Where is the report going to? Where is its destination? Very key. So when you speak to internal report, first thing is you look at from the content or the exporting this to. If you work for an organization, for example, you work for Dangote PLC, and you work as finance manager reporting to the finance director, and you are preparing a report for the board of directors of Dangote PLC, and you report to your manager, your line manager, who is a finance director. You work as finance manager. Automatically, the report is going to an internal company, and the report is going to be consumed by your board. Your boss will just go through it and sum an internal report. An example of an external report is one that has an external destination, not to your company. So, for example, you work with Honorable Oye and Co. Chartered Accountants, for example. And the client, Gongoni Nigeria PLC, brings their financial statement for scrutiny and for audits. So you're analyzing the financials of Gongoni Nigerian PLC, but you work for Honorable Oye and Co. Chartered Accountants. Of course, you are working on those financial statements, and the output or the destination goes to an organization external to yours. So that's a hypothetical scenario and a practical example of an external report. It employs the letter format. It has the letter format to a client speaking to either the MD or the CFO or the board of directors of another company. And every external report must have a disclaimer on the title page. Internal reports don't need disclaimers because they are not going out of your organization. So there may not be any leakage or for publication or anything. But for external reports, you have to include a disclaimer, which the examiner has expressly stated is very important. And if you don't include a disclaimer, you may be penalized for external reports. So these are nitty-gritties you need to take note of and be very aware of in your practice sessions of report writing. So the second step, having analyzed or decided which is internal or external, is to determine the report's purpose. What is the purpose of the report? Is it to inform your audience? Is it to advise your audience? Is it to direct them? Is it to persuade them? So this is very important. So you need to understand that the purpose of the report will determine your content and your tone. Your tone. This is very important. So take note, the report will determine your tone and how you address or what you write, how you approach the work will be determined by the purpose of the report. And the purpose of the report is given to you expressly by your client or your boss. You need to ensure that the purpose of the report, the objective, is well stated. The objective is well stated and well followed and well strategically used as a guide for you to answer and for you to provide context to your client or to the person that asked you for that output. So the report's purpose is very important, and that would provide credence to how you are able to give your output and provide context to what the request has been or is from your client, and very important. So some purpose will look at information. You need to inform your client, or you need to inform the recipient of your report. What does it mean to inform? To inform means to provide facts or data so your audience or your client gains knowledge. For example, you're saying you're communicating on an audit, when it will begin, when you continue the field work, when you end. So information speaks to providing facts or data to the request provided to you. For example, the next one is to advise. To advise means to recommend a course of action based on expertise or judgment. So advising could be an area in the case study exams where you could be provided with requests or requirements on advise your client on actions or course of actions to take. And the third one is to direct. To direct means to instruct or command someone to take specific action. So you could be asked by management or the board of a company to direct them on what to do to help address some business challenges. And the fourth one is persuade. What does it mean to persuade? It means to influence attitudes or decisions, getting others to accept your viewpoint or to take action. So these four verbs are verbs that could be used to understand the purpose of a report. And the third step, having spoken to the purpose, is to understand the recipient, the position of the recipient in the organization, and to choose the appropriate language and style, your tone, to communicate to that recipient who receives the report. So you need to understand the recipient who takes the report. So key considerations in report writing speaks to the purpose and objective, the type of the report, whether it's informational or analytical, the structure, the audience, the tone, the suitable headings and subheadings you use to carve out the report are key considerations you must not play with in the report writing. Very important. So the business analysis report is one of the reports you perform in case studies, and it could be presented in any requirement. And the purpose of a business analysis report is to move the company forward by providing information for operations, for tactical decisions, and for strategic decisions. So we have strategic decisions, the top management or those that provide direction for the company. We'd have tactical operational decisions around middle managers and those that operate at middle management level. Then we have the operational management for those that are the low level and those that carry out the instructions of the strategic and the tactical managers. So you need to understand that business analysis report help to provide way forward, solve problems, add value to an organization's way of doing business. And you must show the strengths and weaknesses which are internal to an organization and the opportunities and threats which are external to an organization through the SWOT analysis in analyzing their business. You also need to use the company's records, historical reports, reports in retrospect, board minutes, and this leads to action plans to build on the strengths and address weaknesses which are internal, seize opportunities that are external, and avoid threats that are external for the company. So business analysis will take this form in any way you are required to provide some analysis on the business in any requirement. So SWOT analysis has processes you need to go through in analyzing the strengths and weaknesses of a company. You need to look at growth areas, the core competencies, the mission statement, the vision statement, the objectives of the company, and how they do their business very, very pragmatically could be a core advantage, a competitive or special niche for the company. So you need to understand SWOT analysis process in analyzing the strengths and also the weakness of the company. You also need to identify critical success factors, what it takes for the company to succeed that they are not doing, and key performance indicators around areas that are very important that they could measure their performance and set targets to be able to meet them. So key performance indicators are important for companies, and you should be able to analyze those KPIs, those CSFs, to help the company assess performance against what is benchmarked, which could be their budgets or their forecast, to ensure that they meet these budgets and forecasts and have positive results. So that's a general introduction into report writing in the ICAN case study exams. So before we delved into, or before we go quickly into detail, if you have any questions, please go ahead and interject very freely so that you will have a grasp of what we are doing pragmatically. All right, so we'll go to the next unit, speaking to financial statement analysis report. The purpose of financial statement analysis report focuses on the profitability and the position of the company. Profitability, the position, and the future potential of the company. So key statements, key documents around this speaks to the performance. Talking about profitability, talking about the performance statement, which is the SCI or the traditional P&L account. And the position statement speaks to the SFP or the traditional balance sheet you know it as. And you also focus on the cash flow statement if provided to you, which speaks to the future potential of the company. And it varies by user because the users of the information are key to how you analyze the report. So the user speaking to either management, investors, creditors, directors, board members will determine where you focus on and how to provide very important information for them. So the purpose focuses on these key financial statements and these key metrics, these key KPIs. And it's very important for you to be able to help them understand if the business is profitable, if the business is efficient and effective, if the business is healthy in the short term and the long term. So key components around profitability, efficiency, short-term and long-term solvency, and analyzing ratios and communicating those ratios in words, because accountants are number people. We are number centric. I must use that word. We are number centric. But some people on the board or your client, those that are asking you for your service, may not be able to understand numbers. So you need to communicate some of these ratios, profitability, performance, efficiency ratios in words. And that is why in the case study exams, all your calculations may not be more than 8 marks, because 8 marks can't get you through the exam. Your narrative, you're explaining those ratios in layman language is what gets you the marks. So take note of that. Calculations, don't waste your time. Just understand how to navigate the numbers and have something that makes sense. Then communicating those numbers in words is what earns you the marks. So a lot of people complain, a lot of students tell me, I did all my ratios well. How come? No, it's not about the ratios. It's about you communicating the ratios in words. Aside the ratios, your 8 boxes has 32 marks for each requirement. So requirement 1 has 32 marks just for explaining the ratios and the numbers. Requirement 2 has 32 marks. That's 64. If you don't explain the numbers, you have only 8 marks. You've lost 64 marks. So case study is not about I did my ratios well, I computed my financial my non-financial data numbers well. You're not going to pass case study. So you need to master report writing, analyzing those numbers into words. And one key component is for you to be able to provide holistic view of the company's financial health. If the company is sick, you need to provide recommendations and solutions for your audience. Okay, what is bedeviling the company? What can we do to move the company forward? That is your role in the case study exams. So the financial statement analysis comprises of the SFP, the SCI, the cash flow statement, the SOC, which is the statement of changes in equity, and notes to the account. These are components of the financial statements. And pragmatically, you have category the guide for preparing these reports. And the guide speaking to determining first the purpose of the report. what is the use of the report, and who wants to use the report. It should dictate the content of your report. And number two is to determine the user's information need. What do they need? Not all ratios are relevant based on the request or the requirement the client provides. So we have 5 categories of ratios around profitability ratios, liquidity ratios, short-term and long-term solvency ratios, investment ratios, activity ratios. But based on user needs and information provided to you in the case study exams, you can't perform all or calculate all those ratios. You have to pick specific ones that are tailored to the needs of your audience or your client. You also need to follow an appropriate framework organized by profitability, efficiency or activity, position, talking about solvency and future prospect in preparing this report. This is very important. You also need to review the company's background, where it's coming from, the financial data provided to you. You need to integrate the analysis with operations of the company from the exhibits, understand the problem first, and what are those problems for you to be able to profile practical solutions that would address these problems. You also need to consider the company's environment, internal and external. Where is the company domiciled? Which sector, which industry? Is it a national company? Is it an international conglomerate? For you to be able to provide context and comparisons and benchmarks to answer the requirement. You also need to provide conclusions, which is very, very pivotal and cardinal. Your conclusions should speak to trends in profitability, how the company is doing, the trend among years, comparisons between the years. So most of the time you're presented with 3-year financial statements, 5-year financial statements, 2 years financial statements. You need to look at the average. You need to look at how the company is utilizing its asset efficiently, ability to meet short-term and long-term commitments. How is the company geared? Is it lowly geared or highly geared? Looking at the mix between equity and debt and the implications and impact of some of this analysis, and how it threatens the future or how it brightens the future of the organization. You need to bring these conclusions to the attention of management in clear and comprehensive narratives. You also, after the conclusions, you need to recommend way forward, the way forward on specific actions the organization should take based on your conclusions to ensure survival and future profitability and sustainability. That's very important. So you have 8 boxes, which we'll be looking at or we've been looking at in the past papers. You have 8 boxes, and the last 2 boxes are very important, talking about the conclusions and recommendations. And for each requirement, each mark you earn is about 8 marks, 4 marks for the conclusion, 4 marks for recommendation, and for 2 requirements, you have 16 marks, without which, if you don't provide conclusions and recommendations, it will be challenging and hard to pass case study, because you just analyze the case and there was nothing to take home or there was nothing to do. So conclusions and recommendations are statement of the problem and solution to the problem. Conclusion is the statement of the problem in my opinion, and the solution, the recommendations are solutions to the problem, which you must provide pragmatically and very clearly in clear and comprehensive terms for your audience and for your client to be able to understand. So in report writing, you need to communicate your thoughts very pragmatically in this order. So it's key. I must tell you, it's very easy to pass case study, except if you don't like to write or you don't like narratives. Some accountants don't like narratives. But then to get you through the case study paper, and also encouraging you to understand that a chartered accountant reports to the highest body in an organization. And even if you report to a particular boss, you grow to a point where you need to present some facts and present some reports. So report writing is very, very key. Very, very key. So a chartered accountant is not somebody that will be at operational or tactical level. One day you will get to the strategic point at the apex of your organization, and you need this presentation skills, communication skills, analytical skills to be able to communicate your thoughts comprehensively and for your audience, for your management team, for the board, the owners of your company to comprehend and understand crystal clear what you're trying to communicate to them. So it's very important you take note of it. You pass the case study exams, but it doesn't end here. You need these skills to help you in your workplace and your future endeavors. Very important. All right, so let's look at the next unit. Please, if you have questions, freely interject, raise your hands, or just halt me, stop me, and I'll stop to get your thoughts, your concerns, your observations, your contributions. Yeah, it's an interactive, even though I'm trying to run. I want us to finish this chapter 10 today. But as I'm running, please be my brakes. If you have any issue, please match the brakes and I'll stop to get your thoughts. Okay, so let's look at the next unit on financial data analysis reports. And this second set, or this second unit, or this next unit, varies by the examiner's requirement. So financial data analysis would vary based on the requirement, the request the examiner provides to candidates. And you must determine the data type to use, the purpose of what the financial data you want to prepare, and management's decision based on your analysis. What is the output? What do they want? So you need to understand your analytical skills in the areas of performance management and strategic management tools to determine what you'll be required to use for the analysis. So some performance management tools around costing, around marginal absorption costing, contribution analysis, break-even point, and all those performance management tools you are used to may be brought to bear here. You may need to employ and deploy them to analyze non-financial data. We also have strategic and performance management tools around models. We've looked at that in chapter PEST tool, Porter 5 forces, value chain model, and performance management tools, a lot of them around value for money, audit, critical success factors, key performance indicators, these four models, very important models around trying to remember the model now. So some of these models are very important because they help you integrate the models into the case or the exhibits provided to you, and it determines how you provide context based on the request. So if you are asked to use the particular tool, or you are asked to use a particular model in analyzing your data, please comply and address the examiner's prompts very expressly. So your analytical skills in using and analyzing this data, it's very important. And the place of practice cannot be overemphasized. You need to practice and practice and practice around this. Also, your analysis results from the basis for conclusion and recommendation. So some of this analysis you provide will help prompt your recommendations and your conclusions for management to act on. And that's very important for you to note. So financial data analysis is not as financial statement analysis. Financial statement analysis, you know, the categories or components of ratios or financials you should perform, but financial data varies and it's a bit much more wider than statement analysis. So in practicing, you will know how to navigate this this unit pragmatically in the exams. All right, any questions, any contributions, any observations? Because we are running very, very fast. Any questions? Okay, if we don't have any, let's run to this very important unit on executive summary. Executive summary. So executive summary is 20% of the exams, and if you score 80% without doing an executive summary, you will automatically be failed. The examiner is going to fail you. So score 80% of the marks, and you do not write an executive summary. For that 20%, which is a prerequisite to passing the exams, you're not going to pass case study. So understand this prerequisite kind of conversation. So you must do your executive summary is a prerequisite in the current dispensation. So what is an executive summary briefly? It's a brief section at the beginning of the report, summarizing the report concisely And the purpose is to consolidate all your thoughts and your points so that readers, users of your information understands the main point without going through the whole report. The whole report may be a bit voluminous. It may have a lot of data, have a lot of content, but then the executive summary is a summary concisely that shows the picture of what you've done in very few thoughts and words or text. So somebody going through your report may not need to read the whole pages. Maybe the whole pages of your report is 50 pages. Your executive summary in 2 pages will tell the whole story of the 50 pages. And that's the essence. So it's not a background or introduction. That's not an executive summary. The essence of the executive summary is for those reading the report to understand why the report was written. It emphasizes the findings succinctly and summarily, the conclusions and recommendations in short words. It answers the question of the reader or the user in brief terms, no stories. That's what the executive summary speaks to. And it's written lastly, after you finalized your report, because you must have done the body of the work. First, you start with your appendices. You get the foundation by your calculations. Your calculations are the foundation. Then you start building. You build by requirement 1, requirement 2, you have built. Then you seal it. You're roofing it with executive summary. That's to cap everything. So you need the foundation, you need the building to cap your report. So the executive summary is a cap and is done last after finalizing the report content. And the structure speaks to, first you introduce the report very succinctly. If you look at some of my reports you've downloaded or have shared on the platform, you'll see the introduction does not go more than 2-3 lines. You state the purpose in the same introduction sentence. Your required action in 1 or 2 sentences. Then you look at the main body of the report around key findings, maybe 2 key findings based on the format the examiner provided to us, 4 conclusions for each requirement and 4 recommendations for each requirement, one line. And you see, this is a standalone report because the conclusion and the recommendations are bulleted. They are bullet points, very short 1 or 2 line summaries. All the stories will have been told in your analysis. And this executive summary will capture this in short sentences. So key questions before you write your executive summary you should ask is, who is the audience of this report? What do they really need to know? How do I summarize what I've explained in the main report? So you need to ask this question about your audience and what they need to know. Also, the intended audience, aside those you are reporting to directly, the secondary audience may differ from the full report's audience. So those needing to know if they need to read further, those seeking specific angles and key decision makers like the board or management would be factored into the content of your executive summary. So what the audience need to know, actions they need to take, should be conveyed without them reading the whole report. So from your conclusion and recommendation, they've seen the statement of the problem and they've seen the solution to the problem proffered to them. So very importantly, the executive summary is a standalone document and should not be more than 2 pages. This is directly from the examiner and the study text. So if you read the study text, it should be minimum 1 page, maximum 2 pages. I see a lot of reports from very good erudite tutors, and I see 3 pages executive summary, and I'm wondering, is it that this tutor did not read the study text? You see some executive summary 4 pages. Wow, I will be like, really? Your executive summary should not go more than 2 pages, depending on the report length. 1 page is fine. Your length of text, your font type could be large, so max 2 pages, and it should carry a formal tone. Avoid first-person pronouns, avoid abbreviations, avoid writing like you are writing to a friend. You have to be formal and official because you are speaking to either the board of directors or your senior management. You are addressing your report today. So the executive summary has to be very, very formal. Take note of that. So in writing it, you need to understand some guidelines. By first stating the purpose of the report immediately, organize your thoughts and points in the same order as the report, and avoid information, summarize results that would speak to a negative picture of the report. So you need to summarize your results. That's your findings. 2 findings, 1 positive, 1 negative. If you look at the format of my report, then the conclusions, 4 of them for requirement 1, we'll look at the format later. The recommendations should be clear. Use different headers to communicate and say this is what you're trying to communicate to the readers, and the format should be similar. So you need to reread it for clarity and then ensure that the key points and the areas of interest are provided clearly and comprehensively to your audience. You also need to proofread the report because it's a 2-page report, and that is why practicing report writing is very important. You can't go to the exam on the exam day to carve this kind of report. You will have practiced it behind the scene. Somebody said about some tennis players that some tennis players play the tennis game for 2 to 3 hours, but then they have practiced for months, 6, 7, 8 months, and have tried all those strokes. You see, backstroke, 4-hour strokes for 800,000 times behind the scene. And they come to display what they've practiced in just 2-3 hours. So all this while you've been reading for the case study exams, you're going to display what you've practiced for months in just 4 hours, and you need to do it well. So practicing report writing, executive summary is very key to be able to ace and pen your thoughts down on the real exam day, on the big stage, the main day. So you need to ask final questions around what the report is about. Why is it important? And that would lead you to how you're going to provide your executive summary. What are the major findings? You pick 2. So, and that would be the results. What are the conclusions? 4 for each requirement, recommendations 4. And you state them very succinctly and comprehensively for your audience. All right, so that's it about the executive summary. But then no matter how the lecture goes, you still need to practice. A footballer that just listens to the coach and does not play the football can never be a star. So it's very important that after the lectures, you need to look for how to practice and put this into work very pragmatically and practically. Okay, so let's go into the next section or the next unit, and it speaks to common mistakes to avoid in executive summaries. So there are mistakes you need to avoid in executive summaries. Number 1, repetition of executive summary contents at the start of the main report. So the main report is provided after you've calculated your appendix. So the main report has more volume, but the executive summary should be more value and summary. So you cannot repeat what you've provided in the main report because that would be too voluminous, and provide it verbatim in the executive summary. So avoid voluminous repetition. Your executive summary is a summary. That's why it's called executive summary. Your background should be less detailed. Avoid too much details so that you can capture the 2 findings or results, and the 4 conclusion, 4 recommendations succinctly. So avoid too much detail in the preliminaries. You also need to avoid too much detail in the general body details of the report. So in communicating the findings, 2 of them, 1-2 lines is okay. For the communication, for the conclusion and recommendation, one line, max 2 lines, so that you can maximize space, rich words and contents, verbs you use, phrases you use to communicate your thoughts clearly. You also need to use different terms in the report. So findings, observations, results, outcomes could be headers you could use. I use more findings. You could use observations. You could use results or outcomes. But conclusion and recommendation is the same. You have to employ those express words. Also, another pitfall or common mistake is to introduce new information not in the main report. Don't forget you are summarizing what is in the main report. So if the main report is saying something different and your executive summary is something different, you are conflicting your findings. So be careful around introducing something new in the executive summary that is not in the main report. The main report may have, maybe you're speaking to ethical issues, and you have 4 ethical issues you've discussed, and each one is like five lines, and you want to bring one of the ethical issues as an executive summary, it should be the same content from the executive summary, from the ethical issues to your executive summary. It's just that it's summarized in context. It should have the same meaning, the same presentation to management, just that it's in summary form. So be careful with including new information in the main report that are not in the body of findings. Also, too much or too little detail. Too much is too much, too little is too little. You need to aim for 1 to 2 pages executive summary. That's minimum 1, maximum 2. You need to cover essential findings, results, conclusions, and recommendations. We cannot overemphasize that. You also need to include executive summary content in the conclusion of the main report. That is, conclusion is a wrap-up of the main points. It's not a summary. So include executive summary content in the conclusion of the main report. Everything should mirror what is in the main report. And that's how to avoid common mistakes candidates make in executives' summaries. All right, so we still have 10 more minutes. Let's look at this unit before we go on break. Let's look at the language and style in communicating your thoughts to your audience and management. Your language and style is very important. You need to ensure that subject-verb agreements, correct capitalization of your headers and subheaders, correct pronouns, correct use of abbreviations, official abbreviations that are allowed. You define them first. Your brevity. How brief are you? Eliminate superfluous content that are written from thoughts that are informal. You need to avoid them in providing your thoughts and language in writing, either the main body of the report or communicating your executive summary. So the content and the appropriate approach to engage your reader should be formal. The language should be familiar with your recipient and common in the subject field you are speaking to. So if you're talking about financial statement analysis, it should be drawn from all the exhibits. If you're talking about financial data analysis and they give you a model, it should be drawn from what the model represents practically. So everything that resonates with you should be exactly as depicted or requested from the requirements. This is very important. You also need to avoid spelling mistakes, overcapitalization. Avoid it, and that can only be be understood and enhanced by practice. Spelling mistakes, so you need to write, rewrite, read, proofread what you're writing. Also, overcapitalization of headers and subheaders should be avoided. And there are 2 basic musts in your language and style. Your language and style speaks to the first must on accuracy. Your analysis, whether financial data, business analysis, must be accurate and based on the information provided. Not accuracy of numbers now or calculation, but accuracy of communicating the context and information provided to you in the exhibit. It must be accurate. You cannot take your thoughts around something that happened in another case to the case study exams. Still face what is in the scenario. So your scenario analysis should be very accurate. Then you have the report should be void of any personal sentiments based on what has been provided to you in the content. You must avoid emotions. Maybe they triggered a part of you don't like from the case, and you decided to emotionally speak to what the case study has provided. No, you have to be objective. You have to be the report has to be devoid of emotions or personal prejudice based on either any conclusions or recommendations on facts presented. So you have to face and avoid bias, and that's what objectivity speaks to. So those are the 2 musts. 2 basic musts for your language and style in the case study exams. This is very important. We still have some 6 minutes more, so let's look at this unit on candidates report format. The report format. Even though we have the PowerPoint I've provided on the format. But then from the case study text, let's look at the format. The first page is the cover page, and it has the letter-headed or the memo format, the letter format or the memo format, depending on either it's internal or external. Then you have the address. Who are you addressing it to? Is it the board of directors? Is it your boss? So you have the two. Then you have the report, the subject. The subject should be the requirement 1 and 2 in summary form. You could state it verbatim, but you don't have time to waste in writing the whole requirement. So you could summarize it. And the report should not be written in any way around financial statement analysis and financial data analysis. That is not a subject. Avoid that. Or requirement 1 and 2, that is not a subject. State what the requirement is in words, but you could summarize it. And it's prepared by either your firm or your boss or your department's name. And you could use your name also, because if you look at my reports, I use my name, then I put the department I belong, because you represent a particular person in the case study exam. So that prepared by should either carry your firm's name, your boss name, or your department's name. Anyone could suffice. Then you have to put the date. Excuse me. You have to put the date. It could be the date of the exam. A date or any date would suffice. Then for external reports, you must put a disclaimer. It's expressly clear. You can see it on the slides, and this is from the examiner. You must put a disclaimer. If you don't put a disclaimer, you'll be penalized. So for external reports, you must put a disclaimer stating that this report is prepared for the board and those that ask you for it, and it's intended for their use only. Anybody that uses it aside who or the recipients of the report, you have no liabilities from third parties who rely on the content of the report without due authorization from you. So this disclaimer is expressly for external reports, and it must be provided in the exams, especially if you have an external report you are preparing. So that's for the first page. Then for the second page, you have the executive summary. And the first section on the executive summary is you don't need to write the section 1 anyway, so that you don't fill it up with unnecessary text. Section 1 does not matter. Just state the general purpose of the report in text. State the summary of your requirements, requirement 1 and 2, any assumptions you came up with in preparing the report, any reservations or professional skepticism you've come up with should be stated in 1, 2, 3 lines very succinctly. And the other section is your requirement 1's conclusions. Requirement 1's conclusion, and the next section is your requirement 1's recommendations. So after the assumptions, it's very important in practice to put findings before the requirement 1 and 2. Before the conclusions and recommendations. 2 findings should suffice before coming up with conclusions and recommendations, because your executive summary is 20 marks. So before you provide conclusions and recommendations, which is 4-4, you should have at least 2 findings or 2 results that comes before this. Then for requirement 2, the same order. You should have 2 findings, then requirement 2's conclusion, 4 of them, and requirement 2's recommendation, 4 of them. So that's the executive summary should be at least minimum page 2, maximum with page 3. You have page 2 and 3 executive summary maximum. Then the next page will be the report on requirement 1, talking about your requirement 1's headings, subheadings, and the 8 boxes you are speaking to. So it may not be page 3, because after the executive summary, you have an introduction also, and you have report outline based on the format. Then you also look at background and the limitations and scope. So we have that format provided, but this is a summary form based on the slides. The next pages will look at your detailed review, talking about the 8 boxes, including your conclusion and recommendation. Then for requirement 2, you also follow the same order, depending on the page you started from. Then your appendices is the last, but that's the first thing you do anyway. That contains your information, calculations, tables, figures, and every numbers you crunched to arrive or to use to communicate your thoughts in text. So generally, that's the candidate's report format in short description. But then there's a PowerPoint. I would also share that after break for you to also look at. And if you're coming for the first time on the call, That PowerPoint will provide context on what the format looks like and how you're supposed to employ it and deploy it in writing the case study paper. Okay, so we'll stop here.